here. So Chris,
Yes.
how you doing, man?
I'm great. It's great to be in Austin. South by Southwest is all around us, and more Bitcoin people even around us. So.
Yeah, exactly. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do in the Bitcoin space?
Well, I am the syndicate advisor of Geodel Syndication, which is a fund dedicated to primarily funding Bitcoin mining operations.
Okay.
Our primary focus is flare gas, so greenhouse emission reduction. Essentially, we're saving the planet and getting paid Bitcoin to do it.
That's awesome stuff. So then how did you get into Bitcoin? Are you more, I guess, have you been into it more because of like the energy aspect of things? Like, have you, I guess, essentially, like, I don't know. I mean, where are you from? Are you from like the Texas, like Houston area or anything? I don't know if you want to dox on that.
Tulsa, Oklahoma is where I live now. I'm originally from Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Okay, cool. Well, Florida stand up. I'm living in Tampa right now, so I can relate to a little bit north of you, but yeah, Florida nonetheless. All right, so yeah, this flare gas initiative, right? I mean, it seems like it's kind of the boom when it comes to Bitcoin mining. A lot of companies are starting to do that. We're seeing, Shell get into the game. Oh, it looks like Butterfly wanted to come in and join us.
How did she get in?
I think Super opened the door and she was whining.
By the way, we're talking about this cute little dog that actually belongs to the syndicate lead, which is a syndicate lead is the first investor, first group that came in on the syndication.
Oh, so I talked to your partner then a little bit earlier today, and he was a firecracker. He was giving me the runaround. But so yeah, how did you guys meet, and then how did you kind of get involved in this syndicate then?
Well, so first of all, how I got involved in Bitcoin, I was paid to be.
Okay.
I didn't know what a Bitcoin was. My background's in capital management, specializing in film production, media production, TV production. And of course, marketing was a big part of that, because when you're not making a movie, the same team makes all your commercials. So the 2020 came along, and I had a client that was a struggling Bitcoin mine.
Struggling Bitcoin mine. Is that what you said?
Yes, at the time, Ethereum mine. It had Bitcoin as well, but it was mostly Ethereum at the time. And they brought me in to help with marketing, help with communications of deals. I loved what they were doing, loved the team, and very quickly, when 2020 came along and film, media, and television just pretty much just tightened up, I went, okay, well, I'm going to take my resources, invest into this, and built that company up, sold out of there, moved on, and essentially became a gun for hire to raise funds.
There we go.
So I'm very good at closing, getting and connecting the fiat currency to the Bitcoin world. And I tell people that bridge has to be very elastic, because the cadence, the speed of those two industries are very different. Especially, if you're talking to a family office, you have to talk one way. If you're talking to venture capital, you talk one way. You're talking to a bank, you talk one way. It's almost like different languages. And so you're a translator amongst all of these, while you're trying to hold the shirt cuff of the Bitcoin person as they're trying to run down the path, because hang on, it's like 1 second, because the money's going to take just like a little longer.
Yeah.
So that translation, I love it. I love bridging the gaps.
Yeah, so that sounds like a very unique skill that is probably had to be self-taught, and because it's like a very dynamic industry. So is there anything like, I guess that sounds like the doorbell, somebody else is trying to come into PlebLab. But on that note, did you, were you involved in some sort of tech kind of raise or something like that before, which was like a very fast-paced industry, or kind of how did you come across this?
I cut my teeth. I was a 3D animator back in the late 90s.
Okay.
And I was a senior animator at a firm that discovered that buildings were needed. You had fundraisers, campaigns for funds like that. And back then, the software didn't easily animate. Nowadays, all the CAD software animates. Back then, we had to actually go to a film and production company to do so. And so we started doing that. And fundraising, capital raising came naturally. I've been around the banking industry all my life.
Okay.
So we started segueing to not just providing 3D animation, providing full turnkey services to fundraise, to help capitalize. And most of that was for buildings. So like the very first Walmart neighborhood market, they were struggling getting the town to approve it. We brought us in, and I had it approved in about 2 weeks. We had school districts raising funds for, if anybody out there goes over to OSU and knows the Gallagher Iber Arena, I 3D animated and did the capital campaign for the Gallagher Iber Arena back in 1999, I believe.
Wow.
So that was a really neat project. We had to bring the second largest crane in the world in for that building project.
Oh man.
So 3D animation leading into capital campaign, capital raising for building projects for up until 2008. Things changed in 2008.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin came out of there. So you could say that was an important time. So that's how, so the tech side of me was very 3D video production. And that's what led me into the film and media. And you can find me on IMDb,
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. Well, yeah, I mean, you're a cowboy now too, huh? Oklahoma State cowboy.
I'm not. My family came from Florida, so we were Gators. But my brother Jeremy, Dr. Ransdell, he actually OSU med school grad. So yes, we have one cowboy in the family.
I gotcha. All right. Well, yeah, you're a Gator fan then, huh? So wait, is Anthony Richardson the real deal or what?
You're asking me about sports ball.
Yep. So you're not a football guy.
I'm a nerd. Ask me about Marvel, Star Trek, Doctor Who. We can talk down that path.
I gotcha. I had to ask the question as the NFL draft is coming up in here in like a month and a half.
I mean, I see you're an Aggie.
Yes, I am an Aggie. Yeah. So we have a big basketball game today, so I had to support the fellas as we got the game tonight. But back to Bitcoin and back to raising. So I asked this to your I guess the syndicate lead. Is that
syndicate lead?
And then so I'm going to ask you the same question. In an economic time that has a lot of uncertainty, obviously we have Silicon Valley Bank falling apart, inflation, running a little rampant. Maybe we got a tame on it, maybe we don't. I don't know. The Federal Reserve kind of raising interest rates. How is your approach when it comes to, maybe looking to raise for some of these companies? Are you guys more pick and choose depending on, I guess, the industry? And yeah, how are you changing your approach? Or are you kind of, you have some sort of strategy and you're just sticking to the course, but maybe not deploying, maybe being a little bit more strategic with how you're deploying?
So first of all, deploying investment into Bitcoin mining is the safest way to enter into the Bitcoin space. I'm sure Giovanni mentioned that risk and reward are not correlated.
Yeah.
You can have high reward and you can have low risk. And I believe that is what Bitcoin mining is about. If you do it correctly, if you have the proper power resources and control of it and a vertical integration, you can actually create a very low risk, high reward scenario. That being said, Bitcoin mining is to Bitcoin what being the real estate, for a bank.
Yeah.
You own a building, it's essential. The bank owner, you can rent it to the bank.
Yeah.
That's why I say it's safer, because you're essential. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
If you got low power costs, which is the key ingredient, then you will be successful. You'll have lean times. And uncertainty, to me, whenever we see these things, that's just part of it. There's ebbs and flows to everything. I don't think this is an uncertain time. I think this is actually, that's like the one thing you can be guaranteed is that things will change.
Yeah.
And so when things are changing, you're like, good, we're getting rid of issues that we have. And unfortunately, people suffer from that because, that's part of it.
Yeah.
There's always going to be times that are highs and times that are lows. I tell people, if that didn't work out, why don't you try something else? Something else is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I think we are part of the solution. And I'm not going to be too outspokenly anti-fiat. I'm not going to be too outspokenly, but I will say I am outspokenly against the Fed.
Yeah.
I think it's a corrupt entity, and call me a conspiracy theorist. I just say that I'm just telling you spoilers of your future, what's going on. But the bottom line is any industry that is dependent on monopoly to exist, I think intrinsically shouldn't.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it is interesting too. I mean, America preaches democracy and all these kind of things. But Jerome Powell and the Fed officials aren't elected officials, right? I mean, it's essentially, say what you want about Jerome Powell, either side of the political spectrum. He was the Fed chair under Trump, and now he's the Fed chair under Biden. So, I mean, he plays both sides essentially. But, he also wants to get reelected based on, the presidential, the Fed is essentially supposed to not be influenced by any sort of political leaning. But because of this, it makes it seem like, he can be influenced because he wants to still stay in his position. So
humans are always influenced. There is not a state of being that a human cannot be influenced. They can be influenced by the temperature of a room. They can be influenced by their personal desires. So they're constantly influenced. So it's not about not being influenced. You want to find somebody that is the most objective.
Okay.
So and being raised by a now retired bank president. He's been in the banking for 50 years as of next month. So
Wow.
he's had a lot of perspective. He's seen worse.
Yeah.
He's always like, this isn't as bad as 1979, 1980, 81, right in there. So one of the things he's always raised, I mean, when I was a little kid, he would say the most powerful man in the world is sitting as a chairman of the Federal Reserve. And that's long before, like I introduced him to the creature from Jekyll Island. And that opened his eyes to a lot of things. He was unaware, even being in the industry, he didn't know how the Fed was formed.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And that was his profession. He's a bank president. He lived and breathed based on the Fed, and acknowledged and recognized the most powerful man is the chairman of the Fed.
Yeah. And then I mean, that's overall just crazy. And it seems like your background is just like, it's super interesting, with your family and everything like that. And then it all brought you to Bitcoin space.
Yes.
So as your dad, or your dad who's been in banking industry for like 50 years come next month, what is his opinion on Bitcoin? I feel like I have to ask.
Absolutely. It's taken me 3 years to get him to be the point where I feel like he's not orange pilled yet. He has absolutely recognized the level of corruption and a level of dishonesty amongst federal and global economics of fiat currency. I'm trying to choose my words wisely, not get caught. This is just being recorded,
Yeah.
But he hasn't been convinced that Bitcoin is the answer, but he definitely likes the idea of it's an alternative.
Yeah.
And it's the first time in history we've had a real alternative.
Yeah.
But the problem he's got is he goes, I still just don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And so and people like him, I think, need a special bridge. And I'm going to do a free plug for my friends back. Doug, if you're watching this, over at Vast Bank in Tulsa, Oklahoma, we have a very unique thing. Vast Bank, the first FDIC, I know it's bad. That's a 4-letter word, FDIC, but they're FDIC insured cryptocurrency and Bitcoin custodian.
Okay.
What's really neat about them is the fact that people who have a hard time jumping into full wallet and operating it. Imagine if you can operate your online banking, now you have another account. So you have savings, checking, Bitcoin, and you can move it seamlessly with, they use Coinbase, I think, is their back end. But the bottom line is that they're opening over 2,000 accounts a day for over the past year. And those are people that would have never gotten a wallet.
Yeah.
So to me, they're an incredible evangelist. They're kind of like that mega church trying to get people, saved by offering donuts and coffee and candy and all this stuff. I'm like, it's not the best, but at least they're going to church,
Yeah.
So I feel like it's not the best, but at least they're showing up to the Bitcoin church.
I agree with that, though, 100%, because I mean, obviously, in a lot of Bitcoin maximalists will tell you that they want, full cold storage, do it the right way, anonymity behind all of it and all that kind of stuff. But I think, for people like your dad, maybe like my grandparents or even my parents, I think too, like to have somebody where it's trusted and, they can see their Bitcoin, their amount in their credit card or checking account and, savings account all kind of in one place. It'll just make it easier. And it makes that like, I guess the fear and kind of like the barrier to entry significantly lower for people, who maybe aren't as technically savvy or feel some sort of, I guess, maybe mental barrier, mental block when it comes to figuring it all out. Because I think, I mean, we've seen it with like the internet and other things like that. So, I mean, like my grandmother, she was going to classes on like how to use like an iPad,
right,
before she passed. So it was like, it's like stuff like that where I think, the older you get, the less like apt you're going to be to learn some of this new, faster moving tech. And, as we've kind of like outlined here, is like Bitcoin moves extremely fast and it kind of is just ever changing in that aspect. But I want to get into a little bit more about mining because you have a unique perspective on that when it comes to, the flare gas and everything, that comes along with that. So, what do you think? I mean, I'll just leave it like kind of broad because we've had like a year of a lot of Bitcoin mining companies either failing or other things like that. What do you think, I guess, is the future for, maybe some of these industry level Bitcoin mining companies? Do you think, I'll lay out a couple scenarios, I guess. Do you think that, that the plug and play kind of Bitcoin miners with these giant farms are still, kind of viable services? Or do you think like we're going to start to move more towards, whether it's using flare gas or, using excess energy from the grid and, during easy times and then during hard times, kind of turning it off? Where do you think, I guess, the future of Bitcoin mining is going to go?
By far, Bitcoin mining is going to be heading towards alternative energy, stranded energy. Number one, it is the most efficient, effective way to utilize, engage, and believe it or not, it's one of the most pioneering and forward-moving industries at large towards green energy. Mm-hmm. Green coin, there's people out there that want to only buy Bitcoin that is mined off of green energy and at a premium. So there's a lot of opportunity there. It is best explained as it is the virtual battery. So you can because if you've got stranded energy and you go, this is going to be wasted unless we build this battery. Well, we already know that building the batteries themselves are toxic to the earth.
Yeah.
And expensive and a limited resource. But if I said what we can do is we can convert that lost stranded energy into something else that's portable and then for free. Yeah. And stored for free in something that's not even physical, so it doesn't even use up any space other than the little bit on a hard drive somewhere.
Yeah.
And then we can move that around. All of a sudden we have created, and so we're going to see an adaptation curve that's going to go exponential very soon. And a lot of it's going to be like, I have meetings right now with ConocoPhillips and with Exxon to discuss some of these for the larger scales. As soon as we have a large scale entity to adopt this, because flare gas, by the way, 90% of it is so small, you can only plug one or two machines to it.
Yeah.
So when people talk about flare gas, no, it's great. It's I get your heart. Realistically, very challenging to find the right opportunity. Stranded, much more opportunity, but also solar and retired wind farms. So wind farms, when they're typically operational, it's because they're being subsidized. As soon as the subsidy contract expires, they just drop the keys off. They're done.
Yeah.
So you can buy those windmills on dime on the dollar.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Well, windmills, are not appealing to most people because they're only providing energy 40% of the time, and it's intermittent.
Yeah.
Well, what about older mining equipment? If you have free energy practically, and you don't care if it's intermittent, because at that moment you'd retire the equipment anyways. You're selling it for junk. Plug that in. So I'm giving away a lot of good secrets. So this is where the direction is going to go, hands down. The next halvening, I think, is going to be the most dramatic halvening we're going to see. I think we're going to see because it's an intentional impact on the industry to help cull the herd. I think those S9s will finally go offline.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you brought up like the flare gas and how that's like kind of, because like from my perspective, I'm not one in the mining industry or kind of like in that energy industry or anything like that, but I hear about everybody kind of getting into it. And like you said, getting kind of excited about capturing that flare gas and using that to mine Bitcoin. And so, on that note, I mean, I'm seeing you're talking to two of the biggest, oil and gas companies, and Shell sponsoring Bitcoin Miami 2023. So for these big players, is it a significant amount of mining, or is it still kind of like a minimal amount of flare gas that they're, shooting off into the atmosphere?
So the difference is there's a lot of opportunities that have not been pursued because they would have to flare.
Okay.
And so that's what we would call that's not flaring, because the EPA doesn't care about them yet.
Yeah.
But they would say, if we have an alternative flaring, we'll go ahead and pursue this opportunity.
Okay. So it's more of like the ability to expand, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. And some of even the pipeline gas is getting to the point where it's not as efficient as mining. Like if you talk to, say, if you were an operator of a well and you had X amount of gas, let's say you had 15,000 MCF a day coming through, and you were getting your net back off of that midstream, you were getting maybe $1.75, $2 the most. And that'd be a really good deal. Your royalties might be taking 20-25% of that. Well, if you were to say, I'm going to turn that off, I'm in pipe, but I'm going to mine instead, you're be making $5 or $6 per MCF. if you self-invest and did that. Even and then you could give that to a mining operation to give them a 20% cut for taking care of it, and still be making more money off your natural gas than if you were if you sell it to the market. So it's not exclusively stranded, it's not exclusively flare. There's even the third category, it's just more profitable.
Yeah.
And so the more we pull off the grid, the less we burden the grid. We're going to make all our municipalities much happier.
Yeah.
We're going to make politicians happier. Okay. And also we're going to be helping save the earth and helping resolve issues that, whether you believe it's as big of an issue as some people say it is, it's still an issue. So you're helping resolve an issue regardless. Sometimes you might be helping just shut up somebody.
Yeah, that's fair.
And taking away the wind out of their sails and putting the wind in a windmill.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. And then using that to mine Bitcoin, right? So, yeah. I mean, that's awesome stuff. But so you brought up the wind, and because that's kind of wasted energy. But you also brought up solar, and I kind of want to get into that a little bit, because from my understanding, it seems like it wouldn't be super efficient to use solar energy to mine Bitcoin, kind of like along the lines of what you were describing with, wind farms like giant windmills and other things like that. So on that note, is there kind of, I guess, an issue similar to these wind farms where there's like a bunch of abandoned solar plants or something like that? Or is that just like a completely different, I guess, avenue?
So there's not much abandoned solar. You can find some used equipment, but the equipment is easily packed up and relocated. So therefore, it's usually put on a marketplace as used equipment. So it's not the same as a windmill that is very expensive to relocate and tear down. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, there's more abandoned hydroelectrical dams than solar. And that's a whole nother ball of wax to discuss, because there's a lot of hydro energy that's wasted. In Oklahoma, we have the GRDA, Grand River Dam Authority. They actually have a Bitcoin mining rider or tariff, however you want to look at it, since it's a program for Bitcoin miners. And they have 750 megawatts right now per hour wasted.
Damn.
Just not being used. Yeah. Because that's how hydro works. It's constantly moving. So it's like it's either you use it or lose it. By lose it, it's just not being converted into electricity. So there's a lot of opportunities at hydro, I think, and solar. You talk about the intermittence. So flare gas, by the way, has an intermittent problem too. So most flare sites, it's not a constant flow. Mm-hmm. So that's a factor. So when you're vetting a site, there's a lot of questions, a lot of check boxes you have to go through to determine, can that work? Solar, everyone goes, well, I can only mine when the sun's up. I said, well, what you do is you're going to do a hybrid. You're going to be on grid at night and on solar during the day. Or if it gets too cloudy or whatever, you can go on grid. And so there's places that have hybrids already built into that system, and you're going to decrease your cost that way. But the best part is the peak hours that the grid complains about us using the most are the hottest and the sunniest.
Yeah. So
typically it's like a ultimate load reduction plan.
Yeah.
So that's where solar comes in. It's a supplement. It's not a 100% source.
Okay.
I want to see a oil and gas. Listen to this, okay? If out there, if any of you do this, you owe me something. I want to see, because the oil and gas, they're out there in the desert. There's nothing out there.
Yeah.
And there's nothing out there for miles. Yeah. So I'm like, I want to see natural gas and solar come together and form the perfect Bitcoin mine.
Wow.
Because you can literally have a vessel that's going to be building up the natural gas while you're using the sun, and then depleting it while you're not. Mm-hmm. And you could create, where I could easily see it being 1 cent per kilowatt.
Jeez, 1 cent?
Amortized, if we do it right.
Damn, all right. So who are we putting in charge for this idea?
Well, Geodel syndication. That's what we do. That's what we do.
I know exactly. That's awesome. So I think that possibility is like, if we have something like that, that's like going to be a major breakthrough.
Well, right now, Geodel is investing in purchasing a big chunk of Geosyn mining out of Fort Worth. And Geosyn mining, the operator, is both oil and gas landman for 15 years, but also a solar energy expert. So you might see that coming around sooner than later.
A little foreshadowing here on a State of PlebLab Day 4. Awesome stuff. But you brought up hydro. And before I let you go, I want to talk about that a little bit, because it seems like a lot of the Bitcoin mining facilities that are in Canada are using hydro, and that seems like kind of a popular practice in Canada, but it hasn't really come over to the States, at least from what I know. So where do you kind of see it going, from here? Do you see us kind of like, because it seems like the popular route has been, the flare gas in the States, and not really, I guess, going to more of those like renewable energy sources. So do you see like, I guess, a future push towards maybe potentially using hydro in the United States, or, or moving, I guess, towards something like that?
I hope so. That's what I want to see that. So in the macro view of what's going on with electric, you have your energy source. So if it's natural gas, it's solar, and this is hydro, that has to go to a substation. So first of all, at the high level, you've got your high voltage to medium voltage step down, and the medium voltage is sent out to the substation that goes medium to low.
Yeah,
and that's where that's where we finally end up starting mining. The biggest issue is most American dams just haven't built the substations for their full capacity. Canadians did.
Yeah.
So the reason you see a lot of people go to Canada is because they already have 100% of the infrastructure down to all you need to drop down is your medium to low voltage transformer and switch gear, along with containers or buildings.
Gotcha.
So building a substation, if you go to PSO or ERCOT or wherever you're going and you say, I want to build a substation, you're probably looking at about 18 months to 2 years.
Okay.
So most Bitcoin miners go, I don't want to wait that long.
Yeah. I mean, in 2 years, we got the next halving and all that.
Less than, it's about a year away.
Yeah.
And so we've got the alternative is to find a private entity, which I've got guys in Texas that can do it in 9 months, maybe 12 months at the most. So that's still a ways, right?
Yeah. So
the hydro approach that Americans are taking is they're trying to find substations already built to have excess power that hasn't, they built a little overbuilt, and which they always overbuild to the request, and see if it's already there. If we had more ambitious industrial and institutionalized investors that said, hey, I have a 10-year plan, not a 1-year plan.
Yeah.
Because that's that different cadence,
Yeah.
The institutionalized investors go, I want a 10-year plan, a 5-year minimum, and Bitcoiners going, I just want to make it to the halvening.
Yeah.
So it's a different headspace. I think that if we anticipate that, you could start investing in building those substations today, because that energy is energy, and we'll always need more energy.
Yeah.
Energy, it's been exponentially growing in demand way outside of Bitcoin. I mean, you don't realize how many things we charge today that 20 years we didn't have to charge.
Yeah. That's fair.
Your hair dryer uses about as much power as an S17, and people don't realize that.
Sheesh, yeah. I had no idea about that. That's insane. All right, so I appreciate you coming in here. I don't want to take too much more of your time. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
My phone's been blowing up, and it's going to my Apple Watch. So I know there's going to be a lot of things waiting for me when I exit here.
All right. Well, yeah, I do appreciate you coming in. So do you have any sort of online presence? You on Twitter, Nostr, anything like that?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Ransdell24. I'm on Facebook, Chris Ransdell, or my page is Rans Rants, where that you get to see my real thoughts. Let's see. I've got, of course, on Telegram, on WhatsApp. You can find me everywhere, Chris Ransdell.
Ransdell24 on Twitter, is that right?
Ransdell24. And back when no one thought Twitter would be anything, I hopped on and just said, well, my favorite number is 24. It'll work.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right. Well, I gave you a follow. I appreciate you coming in here. And yeah, man, thanks for spending some time for me. I look forward to getting to know you a little bit more.
Great. I'll enjoy.
All right, man.